Okay, so another tool that you can use for color correction is Levels, which is right here. And I don't think it's the best tool for doing contrast and color. It's a very quick way to use your histogram to achieve color correction. But because you're working with sliders, it tends to make larger leaps in terms of adjustment, where the curve is much more about precision. So in my opinion, I think that Levels is a little clumsy. So if we want to adjust our contrast, what you'll do is you'll drag the slider in towards the center. And what that does is it deepens your shadow. And then to make your highlight brighter, you drag the highlight towards the center as well. And if you want to adjust your midtone, you drag that back and forth. All right. So now I can go into my RGB channels just like I could in curves. And one of the tricks you can do is you can actually just drag. In theory, this should work. If you drag your sliders to your points without adjusting the midtone of your histogram, it should, in theory, correct the color. So that's pretty close. Yeah. It's very close, but it feels too cold to me. It feels very muted. It feels muted as well, but we would go back and adjust the contrast because it's a process of finesse. So because it feels too cold, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the slider here. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. Now it's starting to go a little bit green. So I'm going to go into the green channel, add some magenta. Now looking inside of the shadow right here, we have red. So I'm going to add some cyan to that shadow. See, and this is where it gets clumsy to me because now I feel like it's too much. So maybe I can just click in here and dial that in with my keyboard. And it's still just, it's too much of a leap for me. I'm not the best at using levels, maybe. Maybe I'm just a curves guy. Person. It's not gender specific. Gotta be PC. All right. So now we'll deepen that up, brighten our midtone, spike up our highlight. Now let's look at our histogram. And we're getting a lot of clipping. So let's go ahead and use this slider down here, see if we can bring that in a bit. So we're going to gray out our whites by sliding this guy over. And we'll open up our shadow by sliding that over, like that. You can see here we're at RGB 248. So you can use that in reference to your zone system. Our black point is at 6. So that's still within zone 1. Just like that. So I don't think Levels is the most powerful tool. I mean, even if we if we compare the two, like this feels like it's a little more polished. I can adjust it again. It's too much saturation. There we go. There we go. Now, if I compare that to, I turn it on, let's take another snapshot in our history. Call this curves. Going to turn that off. Do that. Another snapshot. Call this levels. I need to turn off I need to disable my buttons on my tablet. So there's curves, and then there's levels. You can achieve this with levels. It's just going to be a little more challenging.
But when you look at it through those two, it's almost like the levels is real and the curves is on steroids.
Well, then that's. But this is what I'm saying is that you can.
Like.
There we go, right there.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say with levels, because you work subtly. When do you ever stop and go, okay, I've gone too far? Like I got to tone it all back down.
Yeah, it's finessing.
Right.
It's just finessing, and sometimes I'll think that it looks amazing on screen, and I'll print it out, and I'm just like, oh, I'm so off. Like I really need to
because I
get
love
back to the drawing board.
The really vivid orange that you had before.
Uh-huh.
But when you look at the ones from the levels, you kind of go, okay, that's what it actually probably looked that day. Even at its best, it was a solid orange, but not a poppy orange. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, also keep in mind that
But I love the poppy orange.
So if I bring up my midtone, I'm trying to correct using this monitor. I'm using the projector screen and not my screen. So that way you get a better example. I can go back into hue saturation now. And if I want, I can increase the saturation, or I can decrease it, because that's the intensity of the color. Go into the reds. You can increase that red if I need to, or bring it down. Just like that. But this is my, I think of hue saturation as a bit of a fail-safe, in that if I can eliminate that color cast with either curves or levels, then I'll jump into hue saturation and remove some of the intensity of those colors. And let's see what happens if I go into hue while I'm in hue saturation. If I adjust that a little bit, it turns the lifesaver a little bit blue-ish there. If I go the other way, it starts to go green.
It's awesome. Like if you printed a 10 with 10 different colors.
So like right there, that feels pretty good right there. -4, because now we're getting a lot of difference between our water and the lifesaver. And now if I add a little bit more yellow, so I'll go into blue. So here I'll bring up. So I can make the water a little bit more blue if I want. And now I can grab this other guy here, make my highlight warmer. Too much blue.
So if you wanted to be more yellow, you add more green and more red. Mix it.
If you want it to be more yellow,
More
well,
green and red.
what you want to establish is what color cast you have in there. And then once you get it to a neutral point, that's where you can make those decisions and say, I want this to feel more warm. So then you would add more yellow to either your highlight or the shadow. Or you can just say, what I do is I'll do global color and contrast. And I'll label my layers. And then what I'll do is I'll set up a second layer and I'll call this warming. Because the more points you add to this curve, the more challenging it's going to get to work with that line. So rather than messing with the neutralized balance, I'll just go in here and I'll add a global yellow adjustment like that, right there. Now it feels a little bit more warm.
Less blue means more yellow because it's opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. Is that what you were trying to ask?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
About
Yeah.
logic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and just use this. You got this reference right here.
Yeah.
There you go. Just go straight across on the wheel. And that'll let you know. So let's look at this dandelion. Does anybody kick these when you come across them?
No, I pick
We
them and
pick them and glue them.
I like to kick them.
What's wrong with you?
It's like a an act of where I'm pollinating the world through violence. So it's like violence and
I got issues.
it's like a nice balance of I don't know.
Did you
Try to find an excuse.
It's fun when I walk my dog like gently sniffs them.
Mine eats them.
And then Ryan comes along.
And then I
and
kick
he
it.
dies.
I'm like, yeah.
Dog's like, why'd you do that?
Okay, I'm gonna turn off the screen recording. I'm gonna edit that out. My teacher is violent.